Undercover CEO found a janitor sleeping in the supply closet. What he discovered changed everything. "Please, do not open that door." The voice came from behind the supply closet, muffled, fragile, almost frightened. Isaac Carter froze in place. He had been walking the dim, narrow hallway of the B2 service level, clipboard in hand, pretending to check pipe insulation. The corridor was silent, aside from the occasional flicker of an overhead light and the mechanical hum of distant hotel systems. Until now. He glanced toward the closet, an old metal storage unit bolted into the far corner of the hallway. The latch trembled, just slightly, with a soft, clicking noise. Tap, tap, tap. Like fingernails brushing against steel. Isaac tilted his head, eyes narrowing. He waited. Another soft thud came from within, followed by the faint creak of weight shifting. His heartbeat quickened. He stepped closer, boots landing quietly on the industrial tile floor. The air smelled of bleach and dust, the scent of old rags and chemical cleaner lingering. He reached out and touched the cool handle. "Hello?" he said, firm but calm. "Is someone in there?" No answer. The door jolted, just slightly, as if something inside flinched. Isaac took a breath, adjusted the collar of his Navy Moon maintenance jacket, and pulled the door open. The hinges groaned. The metal door swung wide. Something fell out. A girl, no, a woman, collapsed into his arms. "Whoa!" he gasped, catching her instinctively. She was light, almost weightless. Her head slumped against his shoulder and her arms dangled limply by her sides. He staggered back, half a step, but held firm. She was wearing the hotel janitor's uniform, gray, wrinkled, stained at the elbows. Her blonde hair was tangled, her face pale and slick with sweat. Her breaths were quick and shallow. The smell of antiseptic clung to her like she had been living in bleach. Isaac looked down at her, stunned, unsure of what he was seeing. Then her eyelids fluttered open. Wide, glassy blue eyes stared back at him, panicked. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Please do not fire me." Isaac froze. The words hit him like a cold splash of water. The girl was trembling. Her fingers clutched weakly at the front of his jacket before sliding away. Her knees buckled beneath her, and Isaac instinctively adjusted his grip, keeping her from hitting the ground. She could barely keep her eyes open. He stared at her, heart racing. She had been sleeping in the supply closet, hiding, exhausted, terrified, and now she was begging for her job. In that moment, Isaac Carter, CEO of one of the city's most prestigious luxury hotel chains, dressed in borrowed overalls with a fake name badge pinned to his chest, stood in the fluorescent half-light of the underground corridor, holding a trembling janitor in his arms, unsure of what to say. She had no idea who he was, and for the first time in a long while, neither did he. Angela stirred as Isaac gently laid her down on the narrow cot in the employee restroom. The space was stark. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly overhead. The walls were painted a dull beige, and the only furniture was a metal locker, a beat-up coffee table, and the cot she now rested on. Still, it was warmer, and far more dignified than the inside of a supply cabinet. He pulled an extra blanket from a utility bin and draped it over her carefully. She murmured something unintelligible, her head turning slightly toward his touch. Her cheeks were still pale, her body slack with fatigue. He stood back for a moment, watching her, unsure of what to make of what had just happened. Then, without a word, he walked to the old electric kettle in the corner, filled it with water, and set it to boil. A few minutes later, a soft rustle from the cot drew his attention. Angela blinked up at the ceiling, dazed, then slowly turned her head. Her gaze landed on him, and instantly, the fear returned. I am sorry," she said, voice rough from sleep. She struggled to sit up, pushing the blanket aside. "I did not mean to—" "Hey," Isaac said gently, raising both hands. "It's okay. You fainted. You needed rest." She looked down at her lap, her fingers fidgeted nervously. "You should not have helped me. You could get in trouble." Isaac pulled over a chair and sat across from her, placing a steaming mug of tea on the table between them. "No one's in trouble," he said. "Just drink this. Slowly, she hesitated, then reached for the mug with both hands. Her fingers shook as she lifted it. She blew gently on the surface, then took a small sip. Her shoulders dropped slightly, as if some of the tension had left her body. He watched her in silence for a while. She looked young, mid-20s maybe. Her uniform was at least a size too big, the collar fraying slightly. Her hair, though beautiful, was unkempt and tucked behind her ears with shaky precision. Her shoes were scuffed and damp from the rain outside. "What's your name?" he asked. She looked at him cautiously. "Angela Reed. Nice to meet you, Angela. I'm Isaac." She nodded, not asking anything further. "How long have you worked here?" he asked. "Almost 3 months," she said quietly. "Night shifts." She nodded again. There was a pause. He could sense her walls going back up. "I just clean," she added. "Bathrooms, hallways, sometimes kitchens." Haha, long hours. She sipped her tea. 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. usually. Isaac studied her carefully. "That's a rough schedule." She offered a faint smile, then looked away. "It is a job." There was something in her tone, something resigned. Like this was not the worst thing she had endured, not by a long shot. He leaned forward slightly. "Are you okay? I mean, really?" Angela's hands tightened around the mug. She took a breath. "I am fine. Just tired. That is all." He did not press. He knew that tone, the one people used when they were trying very hard not to fall apart in front of someone else. "Do you live far from here?" he asked casually. A pause. "I manage," she replied, her voice quiet. "Sometimes I stay with a friend. Sometimes—" She stopped. Isaac did not need her to finish the sentence. He already knew. He looked at her again, really looked at her, and not just at the uniform or the exhaustion in her eyes. There was something else. Despite everything, her gaze was sharp, her voice articulate, her presence composed. This was not someone careless or lazy. This was someone surviving. He stood up, walked to the cabinet, and pulled out a small brown paper bag. Inside were some homemade oatmeal cookies he had brought earlier for himself, a rare indulgence in his late-night rounds. He placed the bag on the table in front of her without a word. Angela blinked at it, puzzled. "I made them," Isaac said casually. "Not great, but edible." She opened the bag slowly. The smell of cinnamon and brown sugar filled the air. Her face softened just a little. "And—" He reached into his pocket and took out a folded note. He placed it next to the cookies. "In case you ever forget. We all need somewhere to rest sometimes. That doesn't make us weak." Angela looked at the note, her eyes blinking fast. She did not speak. Isaac turned to leave, letting her have the space she clearly needed. He paused at the door. "You're not in trouble, Angela," he said softly. "Not with me." Then he stepped out, letting the door fall gently shut behind him. Isaac found himself watching her more than he intended. Angela never seemed to notice. She moved through her shift with quiet focus, methodical in everything she did. She scrubbed floors with slow, steady strokes, wiped tables as though they held memories, and lined up chairs with a precision that bordered on reverence. She never rushed, never complained, never checked her phone. To most people, it might have looked like she was simply doing her job, but Isaac saw something else. There was a gentleness to her movements, like she was caring for someone, not just things. Like every tile she polished, every corner she dusted, carried meaning. It reminded him of how his mother used to fold his shirts when he was little, like even the smallest tasks deserved tenderness. One night, around 11 p.m., he spotted her in the south hallway near the guest suites. An elderly guest was trying to maneuver his wheelchair on the thick carpet. Isaac stood back, curious what she would do. Angela approached without hesitation, knelt down beside the man, and spoke to him softly. She smiled, adjusted his footrest, then pulled from her cart a folded item, a hand-knitted, faded scarf in a muted shade of blue. She wrapped it gently around the man's shoulders. "There," she said, her voice just loud enough to carry. "Now you look like someone who's been loved his whole life." The old man chuckled, his eyes crinkling. "I have been, but not for a while." Angela smiled again, and Isaac watched as she guided him slowly down the hall, step by step, as if it were the most important thing she had to do that night. It stuck with him. Every shift afterward, he noticed more. Angela clocked in precisely on time and disappeared down the same dim corridors without fanfare. She worked the graveyard shift, avoided the staff lounge, and never took long breaks. Every evening, when her shift ended, she did not leave through the front door. Instead, she would slip down the service hallway on the east side of the hotel, heading toward the old equipment storage, a section with no active surveillance. He did not confront her. Not yet, but the questions in his mind grew louder. Was she living in the hotel, sleeping on site, hiding something? He started staying later than usual, timing his walks to coincide with the end of her shift. She never noticed, or if she did, she said nothing. Well, then, one night, around 3:10 a.m., he saw her again. She emerged quietly from the janitor's closet near the loading dock, holding a folded blanket under one arm and a small photo frame in the other. She did not see him standing in the shadows. She moved down the hallway like a ghost, silent and slow, the soles of her worn shoes barely making a sound. She disappeared into the old supply room on B2. Isaac waited. 5 minutes passed. 10. Finally, curiosity overtook restraint. He followed the hallway, moving slowly until he reached the door of the supply room. The light inside was dim, filtered through a broken panel in the ceiling. He reached for the door but stopped. Through the crack in the doorframe, he could see just enough. Angela had spread a stack of clean towels into a makeshift bed. She sat on top of them cross-legged, her back to the door, the small picture frame clutched tightly in her hands. She stared at it for a long time. Then she pulled a thin blanket over her shoulders and lay down, curling up like someone trying to disappear. A few seconds later, she sighed, a sound so quiet, so weary, that Isaac felt it echo in his chest. Her hand slipped over the photo as she closed her eyes. He stood there, frozen, the woman who scrubbed toilets with dignity, who comforted strangers like it was instinct, who worked with discipline and grace, was sleeping in a supply room. His hand tightened around the doorknob. He could walk in, say something, offer help, but something in him hesitated. He watched her shoulders rise and fall, her blonde hair spread across a pile of towels, the photo still clutched to her chest. Then he slowly released the handle, the metal clicking softly back into place. He stepped away in silence. Sometimes, he thought, the loudest cries are the ones no one hears. It was nearly midnight when Isaac found Angela sitting alone in the back stairwell, her legs pulled up close to her chest, arms wrapped tightly around them. The cold concrete steps did little to insulate the space from the night chill, but she did not seem to mind. He hesitated at the top of the stairs before descending slowly. "I thought this was the one place no one else came," she said, without turning around. Isaac stopped halfway down the steps, watching her back rise and fall with a steady, practiced breath. "I'll leave you alone if you want," he offered. She shook her head. "No, you can stay. It's just quieter here." He sat 2 steps below her, close enough to speak, far enough not to intrude. They sat in silence for a while, the air between them thick but not uncomfortable. Angela stared at the peeling paint on the opposite wall, her eyes distant, unfocused. "I used to dream about stairs like this," she said softly. Isaac tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "Hospitals, medical schools, all those old buildings with echoing hallways and polished stairwells. I used to think I'd walk them wearing a white coat, carrying charts, saving lives." He looked at her, surprised. "You studied medicine?" She nodded once, slowly. 2.5 years at Boston Medical. I had a full scholarship, top of my class. He waited, knowing not to interrupt. "My dad died when I was 12. My mom raised us alone. She worked 2 jobs just to keep my little brother and me fed. He's autistic. Not mild. He's full-time care, nonverbal, bright, but trapped. I always wanted to fix things for them." Her voice trembled at the edges now, but she pushed on. "I studied hard, applied for everything, worked weekends. Got in. I was going to be a pediatric neurologist. That was the dream. But then," she trailed off, her lips pressing into a thin line. Isaac said nothing, letting the silence hold her words. "She got sick again," Angela continued. "Mom, breast cancer, stage 4. It came back fast, aggressive. I tried to keep going, classes by day, hospital by night, caring for Dylan in between, but the bills kept growing. The time kept shrinking." She paused, a breath catching in her throat. "She passed in my 3rd year. I missed 2 exams to be with her. They wouldn't let me make them up. I lost my scholarship, then my lease, then everything." Isaac swallowed hard. "I sent Dylan to live with a friend of hers across town. I took the night job here because it paid cash and no one asked questions. I told myself it was temporary, just until I could figure it out. Just a month, maybe 2. Angela laughed softly, bitterly. "It's been almost a year." He turned to her, but she still would not meet his eyes. Instead, she pulled something from the pocket of her janitor's jacket. A small, crumpled vinyl wallet. From it, she carefully unfolded a tattered student ID. The edges were worn, the colors faded. Her photo showed her younger, smiling, hair pulled neatly back. She held it out to him. "I keep this," she said quietly, "not because I still think I'll get back there, but because it reminds me I was once someone who believed I could." Isaac took the card gently, staring at it for a long moment. Her name, Angela Reed, printed neatly beneath the logo of the university. He handed it back to her without a word. Angela tucked it away carefully, like it was the last fragile piece of a life that no longer belonged to her. "I don't steal. I don't lie. I just try to stay invisible," she whispered. "People don't help what they cannot see." Isaac's chest ached, and for the first time, he felt the full weight of how little he truly knew about the lives that moved quietly around his empire of polished marble and 5-star lobbies. "I see you," he said, softly. Angela looked up at him then, her expression unreadable, but for the first time she did not look away. They fell into a rhythm neither of them planned. Every night after her shift ended and before his inspection rounds concluded, Angela and Isaac would meet on the back stairwell near the service elevator, a forgotten corner of the hotel where no one ever came, quiet and dim and unimportant, just like them. Angela always brought 2 paper-wrapped sandwiches, one for herself, one she offered with a shy, almost embarrassed glance. Isaac never refused. In return, he brought little things, a shared thermos of hot tea, a bar of chocolate, a boiled egg with salt packets. They never made a big deal of it. It just became theirs. They talked. Angela asked him about his old job, and he invented a background in maintenance at a hotel in Cleveland. Truth mixed with lies, enough to hold together. He hated deceiving her, but he needed time. Time to understand her, to see the truth without the filter of position or power. In return, Angela shared pieces of herself, slowly, cautiously. She told him stories about her brother Dylan and how he used to fume every time he wanted something instead of using words. She talked about her mother's terrible baking and how they used to laugh over burnt cookies. Sometimes she would trail off mid-sentence, as if catching herself getting too close. Isaac never pushed. He simply listened. One night, as she wiped her hands on her apron, Angela looked at him and said, "You clean windows wrong." He blinked. "Excuse me? Your strokes are circular. You need vertical passes, down, not around, less streaking." He raised an eyebrow, amused. "You're telling me I've been cleaning windows wrong for 30 years? I am telling you you've been cleaning windows wrong since the first day you picked up a rag," she replied, grinning. He laughed then, real and open. "Fine, show me." And she did. Right there, with a spare rag and a glass panel on the stairwell door, she demonstrated. Isaac copied her movements, mimicking her exaggerated gestures, and they both ended up laughing so hard they had to sit down. Moments like that made the nights feel lighter. And yet, beneath it all, Isaac noticed the fatigue in her steps, the way she winced when standing too long. He watched her limp slightly on her left foot after long shifts, her shoes too worn, the soles peeling. So, he did something. Quietly, without telling her, He bought a pair of sturdy, weatherproof work shoes, black, supportive, a half size up, just as she needed. He tucked them inside the cabinet where she kept her cleaning supplies, right next to the mop she always complained about. Inside one of the shoes, he slipped a small folded note, handwritten in his slanted script. Someone like you should not be walking through life in pain. You deserve better with every step. The next night, she arrived on the stairwell, holding the shoes against her chest. Her eyes were glassy, her voice barely above a whisper. "You did this?" Isaac looked at her gently. "You work hard. It is the least someone could do." She lowered herself onto the steps beside him, her fingers tracing the edge of the shoebox. Her walls, so carefully built, began to crack. Then, suddenly, Angela broke. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. Not from exhaustion, not from loneliness, but because, for the first time in so long, someone saw her. "I do not cry," she whispered, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. "I stopped doing that a long time ago." "You do not have to stop here," Isaac said softly. She turned to him, eyes red, face flushed, but there was something else behind her tears. Relief. And maybe, just maybe, something beginning to look like hope. The morning shift was not supposed to start for another hour, but the commotion in the service hallway made it feel like midday. Angela stood frozen, her back against the supply closet door, her belongings, blanket, picture frame, a worn hoodie, spilled across the floor in front of her. Two supervisors loomed nearby, one holding a clipboard, the other tapping impatiently on a phone. "We found her sleeping here again," the senior manager said sharply. "Third time. That's grounds for immediate termination. Company policy is very clear." "I told you it was just for a moment," Angela interrupted, her voice trembling. "My feet were in pain. I just needed to sit. I did not mean to sleep, I swear." "No one is paying you to nap in closets," the woman snapped. "You are done here." Angela's face crumpled. She bent down to collect her things, hands fumbling with the photo frame, her cheeks burned with shame. Then a voice cut through the air, calm but firm. "That will be enough." All eyes turned. Isaac stood at the end of the corridor, still wearing the Navy maintenance jacket, his hair damp from the rain outside. He walked forward with a quiet confidence that stopped everyone in their tracks. "Who are you?" the supervisor asked, irritated. Isaac's eyes didn't leave Angela. "Step away from her." The manager hesitated, frowning. "Excuse me? Are you in charge of this department?" Isaac reached for the zipper at his collar and slowly unzipped the jacket, pulling it off and revealing the crisp white dress shirt underneath. He removed the badge from his chest and let it fall to the floor. He straightened. "My name is Isaac Carter," he said clearly. "I am the CEO of this hotel group." Silence. One of the younger staff members dropped their clipboard. A janitor nearby stifled a gasp. Angela stared at him, stunned. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "I have been here undercover for several weeks," Isaac continued, his voice even. "I've seen enough to know what needs to change. But this," he gestured toward Angela, "is not what's wrong with this place." He turned to the supervisors. "You will not fire her. She is not the problem. She is the reason this place still has a soul." The manager's face paled. "Sir, you're dismissed. I will speak with you later." The hallway emptied faster than anyone could blink. Isaac turned to Angela, who still had not moved. She looked at him like he was someone she had never seen before. "Angela, stop." Her voice was low, not angry, not loud, just broken. "You lied to me," she whispered. He stepped closer, cautiously. "I never lied about who I was to you. I just did not tell you everything. You needed to pretend you were someone else to see how people like me really live," she said, eyes brimming. "You listened to my stories, you took my food, you sat beside me every night. You made me think," her voice cracked. "You made me think I wasn't alone." Isaac reached out. "Angela, I meant every word. Everything I felt was real, is real." She took a step back. "Do you know how hard it is to trust someone when the whole world already looks through you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "And then the one person who saw you turns out to have been standing behind a mask the whole time." She clutched the blanket to her chest. tears now freely streaming down her face. "I told you things I never said to anyone," she whispered. "I showed you who I was, and I saw you," Isaac said quietly. "Every part, even the ones you tried to hide." But she shook her head. "I do not know who you are anymore." Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, her steps quick, her shoulders stiff, her face streaked with pain. Isaac did not follow. He stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by silence and regret, the mask in his hand now useless, because the one person he most wanted to see him had already turned away. Angela left the hotel without saying a word. No dramatic exit, no final glance, just silence. Her chest felt hollow, like all the air had been taken from the room the moment Isaac revealed who he truly was. It was not the deception that crushed her, it was the hope. The foolish, dangerous hope that maybe, for once, someone had actually seen her, not as a burden, not as a case to fix or a mistake to correct, but as a person worth listening to. She returned to the small room she shared with her mother's old friend, where her 13-year-old brother Dylan had been staying. The space was cramped, sparsely furnished, and smelled faintly of detergent and old wood. Dylan sat cross-legged on the floor, building something intricate with colored blocks, his head tilting at a familiar angle when she entered. He did not speak. He rarely did. But his eyes lifted to hers, and they held that same wordless comfort, that unspoken question, "Are we still okay?" The next morning, Angela took Dylan to his scheduled assessment at the Early Intervention Center, one of the few appointments she had scraped together enough money for. But the moment they stepped inside, she knew something was off. The center was immaculate, far more advanced than the ones she could afford. Glass-walled classrooms lined the halls, each filled with children receiving one-on-one attention from highly trained specialists. Soothing music played in the waiting area. Every detail felt impossibly beyond her reach. She approached the front desk with hesitation. "I think there's been a mistake," she said. "My brother, Dylan Reed. We had an appointment, but I can't afford this place. I only filled out an intake form online." The woman at the desk smiled and handed her a sealed envelope. "We've been expecting you. This is for you." Angela opened it slowly. Inside was a comprehensive treatment plan for Dylan. Personalized therapy, weekly sessions with a behavioral specialist, speech training, even parent counseling support. Every service had a check mark beside it, each followed by the word, "paid." She flipped to the final page. There, written in familiar, slightly slanted handwriting, was one simple sentence. "No one can study well when their little brother is being left behind by the world." Her breath caught. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the envelope. It was Isaac. There was no signature, but she would have known that handwriting anywhere. And the truth of it hit her harder than anything he had ever said aloud. While she had been questioning his sincerity, mourning the loss of trust, he had been helping Dylan, quietly, without asking for credit or thanks. As she helped Dylan put on his coat, something slipped from the inside pocket. A pair of brand new shoes, small, sturdy, child-sized, slid out onto the bench. She picked them up with shaking hands. Same brand, same color, the same thoughtful practicality of the shoes Isaac had once given her. That night, she could not sleep. Her thoughts circled and spun, trying to reconcile the lie she thought she had uncovered with the truth he had never spoken. She realized then that sometimes people wore masks not to deceive, but to protect the fragile parts of themselves. The parts that still believed in good, in change, in people like her. Just before sunrise, Angela returned to the hotel. She did not go inside. Instead, she walked quietly to the side entrance near the executive offices and left a small canvas bag in front of the CEO's door. Inside the bag was the pair of work shoes Isaac had given her, scuffed now, worn from months of hard steps, but still intact. Next to them, a neatly packed lunch she had cooked herself, still warm in a glass container wrapped in a dish towel, and nestled between them a small folded note. A doctor's Bethan note. She wrote only one sentence. "I learned how to walk alone, but if you are still standing there, I'd like to try again, on these feet, with you. Isaac found the bag just after dawn, resting outside the glass door of his office. The hallway was still, hushed in the quiet before the city stirred. He bent down, opened the worn canvas carefully, and pulled out each item: well-worn shoes, a still-worn meal, and a folded note. He smoothed the paper, reading the words in her familiar handwriting. I learned how to walk alone, but if you are still standing there, I'd like to try again, on these feet, with you. A soft smile tugged at his lips, not triumphant, just finally able to breathe again. That night at 10 p.m., Angela stood before the old supply closet. Her hands trembled as she reached for the handle. The hallway was as quiet as the night she had first fallen through this door, but tonight there was no fear, only hope. She opened it. The tiny room had transformed. On the wall, framed in dark wood, was the only photo she had of her mother and Dylan, smiling in a summer light. Below it, a small bookshelf held updated medical texts and a box labeled Dylan, filled with neatly arranged therapy supplies. In the center sat a pair of pristine white nursing shoes, and beside them a laminated student ID. Angela Reed, restated. On the opposite wall, a plaque read, "The closet for those who dared to continue." Angela's breath caught. She turned, and there was Isaac. No jacket, no title, just him. His voice was quiet. "I did not do this out of pity. You reminded me what really matters. It is not about position or title. It is about people who keep going when no one's looking." She stepped forward, her voice barely a whisper. "You gave me back my brother's laughter. You gave me back me. I only helped you see what was already there. You saw me. I never stopped." She placed her hand gently on his chest. No speeches, no promises, just two people choosing to stay. In the weeks that followed, Angela returned to medical school, her tuition quietly covered. She became a peer advisor. Her story passed from one struggling student to another. Dylan thrived in his program. He spoke more, laughed more, even painted his first portrait. His sisters. Together, Angela and Isaac founded the Shelter Project, offering housing and support to students like her. They staffed it with people who once knew what it felt like to be unseen, and this time they made sure no one was. One spring morning, Angela stood at the front of her first pediatric class. Her name badge caught the sunlight. Her voice, steady and soft, carried across the room. "I used to sleep in a supply closet," she said, "not because I was lazy, but because I had nowhere else to dream." She paused, letting the truth settle. "But I am here now to tell you that light finds us, even in the darkest places, and dreams, they wait. Sometimes longer than we'd like, but they do wait." At the back of the room, leaning quietly against the wall, Isaac smiled. "If this story touched your heart, if you have ever felt invisible in a world that moves too fast, remember this: you are not alone. There is light, even in the darkest corners, and sometimes hope is waiting for you right where you thought you lost it." Thank you for watching Soul-Stirring Stories, where every tale is told not just to be heard, but to be felt, to heal, to cry, to remember what truly matters. If you want more powerful, emotional stories like this, stories of compassion, resilience, and love that defies the odds, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a moment with us. Soul-Stirring Stories, where every story is a heartbeat. We tell them so you never forget. Miracles are real.